recording. Okay. So you will hear more about the AfriConEU project in a few minutes, but I just want to let you know that this is not a standalone activity. So we are building this networking academy in which we design and deliver several masterclasses, webinars, and workshops. So we developed this overall program. Our topic today is lessons from European startups, and we have here an amazing guest that will be introduced later on. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Catarina Reis. I am project officer at the Center for Business Innovation at Porto Business School in Portugal. Porto Business School is part of the consortium of the AfriConEU project, together with more 10 partners from 9 countries. Our role in the project has been mainly program designers and project managers. And having said that, I will pass the floor to Promise from Buni Innovation Hub in Tanzania for her to present the AfriConEU project. Promise, the floor is yours. Please let us know more about the AfriConEU project. We can see.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So good afternoon from Tanzania, or the other side of the world. My name is Promise. I'm from Buni. We are an ecosystem builder in Tanzania, and we work with early stage startups as well as hubs, assisting new and existing hubs. With regards to the AfriConEU, is the first trans-continental networking academy that links African and Europe digital innovation hubs with the overall goal of enabling capacity building, knowledge sharing, networking, collaboration, and possible joint programs and venture developments between the two continents. Our objectives is to facilitate knowledge and experience sharing, have beneficial partnerships, and supporting creations of collective projects to boost digital economy. Our consortium has 11 members from both continents and 4 from Africa and 7 from Europe, and they are ranging with digital innovation hubs. We have 5 phases into the program. Phase 1 was the context and state of art analysis. The report is available on the website for anyone who wants to know. So we looked at the state of play in Africa, and there's some insights on some gaps that are available that we've sought to develop and plug in and where we created our intervention from. Phase 2 was developing the Networking Academy, which is currently this is what this masterclasses and the webinars are. So the Networking Academy has workshops, webinars, and masterclasses. And phase 4 is the community development and how to upscale and sustain our results. And phase 5 is communication and dissemination of the project to make sure that the intervention is wide-reaching and can reach the target audience that we have. So as mentioned, this is one of the Networking Academy. On top of the workshops and the webinars I've mentioned and masterclasses, we had the International Brokerage event back in November, and we will be having another. We'll be having a capitalization event in November as well. Our target audience ranges from policymakers, initiatives, EAU, hubs, and other ecosystem builders. Our semantic areas are 4. So we deal with the business development model and multi-act approaches, technology transfer and innovative technologies, startup financial support, and entrepreneurship skills. All these areas were developed according to the context analysis that we first started with. So as Katarina was mentioning, please be on the lookout for more webinars and interesting content coming up. This was our 2022, and our 2023 is looking even more exciting. We've just started the webinar this webinar, we just started this masterclass now, but we have another one on building theory of change. We have a webinar on impact monitoring and the gender lens innovation workshop that is hybrid in Tanzania and will be broadcasted on the 16th of February. So please be on the lookout. Our website has all the information on other interesting topics coming up. And academy activities are free. Registration is needed to access. It's Eventbrite. It's easy to do. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Promise. It was very clear and short. So thank you very much for presenting the project. Now it's time to focus on our masterclass. So welcome, João. Can you please say
Hello.
about you and your experience before entering into the topic?
It's a great pleasure to be with all of you here today. My name is João Barros. I spent half of my career in academia as a professor of electrical and computer engineering at the University of Porto, and had the honor to work also at leading universities like MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. And during that time, I was developing technologies to basically build an internet of moving things, so enable different moving devices to connect with each other and with the internet. And out of that came a startup that basically took over my life in the second half of my career. And so for 10 years, I've been building startups and businesses and products. And last year, I sold my company to an Israeli dash cam company called Nexar, and I'm the chief platform officer there right now. And this year, I'm actually taking some more time to reach out and get to know entrepreneurs all over the world. And I'm particularly curious about Africa, given that it's one of the regions, if not the region in the world, that promises the largest growth opportunities. And so I'm very, very curious about that. And so thank you, Katerina, for this opportunity.
We look forward to connecting.
Yes, João could be an ambassador of our program.
It's always a pleasure, and I always learn a lot also from opportunities like this. So thank you.
Thank you. So moving to the topic, lessons from European startups. Do you think that we have that much to teach to the African ecosystem? Or what are the main insights that we can give from our experience here in Europe, and of course, in your case, also in America?
You know, that's exactly the question that was on my mind, because every ecosystem is very different and has its own challenges. You mentioned Europe and the US already. There you have two completely different, markets and ways of approaching entrepreneurship and approaching venture capital. And the same thing goes for the Israeli startup ecosystem, which I'm now getting to learn also more closely, given that I work for an Israeli company. And what I thought of might be most useful is actually to talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, because even though the ecosystems are quite different, financing works differently, business models that work in one place don't work in the other and need to be adapted and rethought at every step of the way. That process of finding product market fit, figuring out what business you want to build, how to build it, asking the right questions, and most of all, at the same time, staying resilient throughout the entire process. That's just part of being human and dealing with challenges and staying, creative and finding the balance between accepting the brutal facts of what is actually happening to your business in the market right now, but staying very, very hopeful about the long-term opportunity and your ability to get there. And so I thought that, one thread that we could take on this masterclass is go into these aspects from a founder perspective, and I'll certainly share experiences, and some of them will apply, others won't. But what I'm hopeful is that at least that entrepreneurial mindset and how to cultivate that, that some of that might be useful for our listeners.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly the idea, just to share experiences and try to engage with our participants.
Yeah, I also think an experience is worth 1,000 pieces of advice. So I'm happy to do that.
So do you want to share some presentation or just keep talking?
You know what? I've come to realize that presentations sometimes distract us from the human side. So I'll just stay on camera, and let me just take a few minutes to tell you our story, and then hopefully extract some insights, and think a little bit out loud also with all of you. Then I would like to have a moment of crowdsourcing of topics and things that you would love for me to dive deeper into. And overall, I think time will go faster than we imagined. So back in 2011, some of you might have heard from the news that Europe was actually not in a great shape. There was a financial crisis that started in Greece, then Ireland, Italy, and Portugal. It reached Portugal in 2011 in a very, very bad way. The country was defaulting on its debt almost, and so it had to be rescued by the International Monetary Fund. And suddenly, the political side had to introduce very severe cuts. And at the time, I was a professor and had a pretty large group, so about 16 PhD students and postdocs that were working together with me on new networking technologies. So the algorithms and protocols that enable devices to share data with each other and with the internet. I realized, the students were getting really, really sad and depressed and not seeing a future and thinking about immigrating. And so on Christmas 2011, I invited my group to come to my house for a celebration, a dinner. And the atmosphere was so gloomy that I decided, okay, I have to do something. And so I looked at them and I said, you know what? 2012 is going to be the year where we're going to take all these technologies that you guys have been developing, and we're going to take them to the market. And I have no idea how to do that, and I really didn't know at all how to do that. But on January 2012, we start. And suddenly the level of energy in the room, started going up, because now there was something to look forward to, something new to learn. And if you can't find jobs, then sometimes you have to create your own jobs. And so that was the hope that we had, and we started working towards that and created two startups. One was Streambolico, which was a company that was essentially using Wi-Fi to spread information in crowded spaces like stadiums, train stations, airports, and so on. And the other was Venium, which was enabling vehicles to connect to each other and to the infrastructure, build mesh networks of buses, trucks, etc., that basically could do two things. One is offer free Wi-Fi to people as access points that are moving around, and two, be able to collect huge amounts of urban data, so data from cities that could help us improve mobility, improve sustainability, make our cities safer and smarter. And so those were the startup ideas initially of how to bring our technology to the market. And looking back, it was almost a little bit naive in the sense that we started, just thinking, yeah, we have this great technology, so let's start companies and let's bring this to the market. Looking back, there's one thing that somebody once told me that stayed in my mind, which was somebody from the industry was visiting our lab, and said, well, Professor, your technology is really great, but the technology itself is like only 1% of the commercial success. And I was really insulted, because I felt, here we are, doing all this research and papers and publishing internationally. And here's somebody tell us that that's only 1% of the commercial success. He might have said 5%. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but 11 years later, I have to say that it really requires so much more than just technology to be successful in the business world, in the market, and build successful companies. And so 5% is actually quite accurate, I would say, in that you have to build a hypothesis on what your product is going to do for customers. You have to go out and test it. You have to do marketing. You have to add compliance and sometimes regulation and other aspects. If you're working for the automotive sector, for example, like we were, there's all these requirements in terms of the quality of the software and the testing and the certifications and all that. And for that, especially for tech-based companies like the ones we're building, you require substantial amounts of capital. And so one thing that I quickly realized is that I had a management experience, because I was leading an institute and I was leading projects in European projects like yours. We had, for example, the Future Cities project that at the time was financing all the test beds that we were deploying across Porto. And I was the principal investigator for that. And so I had learned quite a bit about management and budgeting and all that. But I had no sales experience or commercial experience at all. Very little marketing experience, only scientific marketing, so to speak, not so much actually product marketing, content marketing, and things like that. And so the learning curve was pretty steep. It helped a lot to have an accelerator at the time, which was part of the MIT Portugal partnership, that basically, told us the second thing that I thought was really important, which was that products are not made in the lab, or in the office. They're made outside with customers. And so go out to the customers, ask them pains. And the funny thing is that when you talk with them, they are actually quite open to, share what their difficulties are, always in the hope that you might help them fix them. And so it takes a really detective work to go and figure out, because often, people have these challenges, but they don't have the solutions, or they have some solution in mind, but actually you're the one that has to help them together, figure out what the best match is, what the biggest intersection is between what you have to offer and what they need to solve. And so that was a long process, and our company went through several different stages. So in the first stage, we were actually doing hardware and software, so a combined product and cloud. So all these three things, which is a little box that you could put in a vehicle, and it would turn the vehicle into a Wi-Fi hotspot and connect the vehicle through many different technologies, cellular, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and so on, into a node in the network that basically is increasing coverage, providing high bandwidth, lots of data, and so on. And we had initial success with bus fleets. And we thought, okay, we're going to be able to replicate this business model. And we were able to raise, first $5 million, then $15 million, just to grow that. And a few months later, we started realizing that sales were not growing at the speed that we needed them to. And I started thinking, oh my God, now I raised all this money and the investors have all these expectations, and I don't know if this product and this business model is going to work. And there comes a moment where you have to do what in Silicon Valley they call a pivot, right? Where you have to figure out, is what I'm doing going to, create a large company or not? If not, then I have to switch. And at the time, the automotive industry was looking for ways to update software over the air. Tesla was showing that you could make the vehicle better and better through over-the-air software updates. And so they needed a technology that was able to move a lot of data between the vehicles and the cloud. So we made two difficult decisions. One was to say, we're not going to do hardware, we're only going to do software. And the second thing was, we're going to give up fleets and we're going to go for auto OEMs, so manufacturers of cars and buses and trucks and so on. Why were these decisions difficult? Because we had hired people to work on those specific things, and now they were not needed anymore. And that really was the hardest thing to do, and I had to do it twice to actually, let people go. Also in particularly challenging times with respect to the job market. And so it was really hard for them, and we tried to help as much as possible. Fortunately, I mean, we tracked it and gave support to finding new jobs, and they, within a couple of months, all of them were employed. So that's the good thing about the tech sector in Europe and in the United States. Even though there are many layoffs right now, there's continues to be a huge need for people to work in computer-related things, IT, and so on. And so that was the second phase, was the automotive industry. And very quickly, actually, we had several of the largest car brands in the world working with us to put our software in their cars. And things were looking great. I raised another round of financing, and then COVID hit. and nobody was driving, nobody was buying cars. And the car industry just stopped completely. One of our customers reduced their research budget by 70%. So, I had to really come together with my team. And that's when I realized, by that time, I actually had an executive team that a finance director, a chief technology officer, a VP of product, and that basically a VP of engineering, who were not only looking after their individual areas inside of the company, but actually were working with me as a team to think about the future of the company, about how to look after all our employees, team members. And it turns out that when you have a very cohesive leadership team, really everything becomes much easier, because you're still, as CEO and founder, responsible for making the tough decisions, but you have a group of people that are equally committed and equally engaged in figuring out what the best solutions are for the company, and then execute it, which is the really important thing too. And so we were able to overcome this difficult period by actually pivoting again, this time to dash cam companies, so companies that put cameras inside your vehicle, and whenever there's an accident, you have a video clip that shows exactly what happened, for insurance claims, for figuring out what happened, but also for fleets in particular, what are employees doing with the vehicles. Many Uber and Lyfts and so on, taxis, have these cameras also to make sure that customer service is where it should be, and if something happens, there's video evidence of what happens. And so this sector has been exploding, and they also needed to move a lot of data between the cameras and the cloud. So again, we went out and looked for product market fit, and were able to close several contracts. And then one of our main customers made an offer to acquire us, and we sold the company last year. And all of this, was a cycle of 10 years of search, discovery, and selling. And the job of CEO is really to do all the things that for which you weren't smart enough to hire somebody to do. and hiring executives for startups is really, really hard. And so I ended up having a challenge, but also the good fortune to have to work in human resources, in sales, in finance, in marketing, in all of these things. And from the personal side, I have to say that I often wasn't very comfortable in many of these tasks or these jobs, because at heart, really, I'm more on the creative side. What I really love is to come up with new ideas and vision, communicate them, doing the research to figure things out, solve complex problems, be able to turn things that sound very complex into simple things that people can understand and are actionable. From that perspective, actually being a professor was not a bad vocation for me. But at the same time, having had this experience now gives me a different perspective on how companies work, how economies work, and most of all, our technology is out there. Nexar, the company I work for right now, has 700,000 of these dash cams out there. Venium's technology helps them transfer all this data. And now, using artificial intelligence, you are able to actually use the cameras also for mapping. So detecting stop signs, traffic lights, work zones. And you need this level of accuracy for automated driving and for autonomous vehicles. And so it's really rewarding now to see at a bigger scale, how technology then can actually benefit people's lives. And so what are the key insights gained from this path? I don't like the word journey because it's being used in so many different contexts right now. But it's definitely, an individual path, and there's this whole storyline about the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell and so on, that basically tells you that you go out of your comfort zone to try to make a dent in the world, so have impact, and then you cross all these different challenges and monsters that you need to slay to ultimately discover yourself. And so that sounds all very poetic and very Hollywood, but there's some truth to this in that throughout these difficult periods, really my resilience was tested to the very limit, for sure. And there was a point, particularly during COVID, where I had to really admit also to myself that I was in deep depression. When you have these floods of negative thoughts, and the tricky thing is that when you're in a leadership position, you actually have to be strong. And even though I believe that it's important for CEOs and leaders to be vulnerable, the truth is that whenever you show vulnerability, there's always the risk that it's interpreted as weakness, and that people lose confidence in your startup and your ability to achieve your goals. And you have so many different audiences. You have, on the one hand, the investors, work. You have the customers that are buying your products and need to know that your company is going to be around, for a few years and not just for a few weeks. And you need to look after your family and yourself and all of that. And so, going back to Katarina's question, so what can we learn, from Europe to Africa? Well, without presuming that I know enough about your ecosystem, I suspect that a lot of the challenges of coming up with products, finding customers for the products, finding a business model that works, so make it super easy, like for them to buy. So for them to find your product, for them to use your product, for them to pay your product, all of that is common to any market that you have, and that brings this necessity. And that was one of the insights that I learned, that you have constantly even to question your assumptions, and never presume that because the things that really came back to haunt us in our journey were things that we didn't know. And so always assume that you don't know, and then build from that. And what I also suspect will be true is that for any company or any venture to be successful, it is really, really necessary for a lot of people to believe in your company and believe in you as a leader. And that is the same whether you're raising money from investors or whether you're building your business from ground up. I have huge admiration for anyone who is able to build a business without investors. And by the way, if you don't need investors, don't go raise money or looking for them. It's 10 times better to be in full control of your business than to have a board of directors and investors. And especially if you take a lot of venture capital, you have to realize that you no longer own your life because you can't just.
I don't know if you can see, but we have a few questions in the chat. So the first one is, what are the most common mistakes people make when creating a startup? I think it's a very good question. But I think, of course, it depends on the idea, on the market, and so I don't know, technology-based startups have these idiosyncrasies, these particularities that are different from the other ones. But I think you can have some insights here on the most common mistakes. You already told us one, that was the assuming that you know and believe in your presumptions.
Yeah. It requires a huge amount of humility, and so I think that that's one mistake that I've done myself, and I see.
No connecting audio. Now you're all back.
Hello. One of the mistakes that entrepreneurs do is that they let their smartphones become so hot that they stop working during master classes. I'm sorry. I hope we can edit this away when we publish the video. And apologies for keeping you waiting. But it's exactly what happened. Now it's cooler. I opened the windows in the car and it's working better again. So sorry about that, Katarina.
It's okay. So you were talking about the mistakes people make when creating a startup.
Exactly. So going back to that really important point of believing that you already found product market fit before you actually have it. So when you sell to a couple of customers, it's not enough to know that you really have a product that is going to build a sustainable business. You need many customers, sizable revenue. And so I found over and over again, and also myself, that people believe they have it before they have it. And so it's good to be a little bit paranoid, about the business. And it's really important to keep selling. So sales really is the lifeblood of business. I found, particularly with tech founders like me, who come from the technology side, and often it's also product people that are completely in love with their product, that you are a little bit in denial with respect to this point, in that the question is always why I love my product. Why wouldn't everybody love my product, right? and that's not enough. So you have to be able to satisfy a customer need, solve a pain, and that is and it has to be a relevant pain enough for them to pay you significant amounts of money for it. And obviously, it's very different if you're selling to businesses, which is more of my specialty, than if you're selling to consumers. And with consumers, you have to be even more frantic about competition. So not assuming, that you're the only choice, but rather, pay attention to what is going on. But then market the hell out of your product, as a friend of mine likes to say. So is being super clear on your marketing. And I think that many entrepreneurs really invest too little in marketing, or too late in marketing, in terms of putting their messaging out, promoting their brand. And so I think that those are some typical mistakes. The other ones are choosing the wrong people to work with. And it starts with your co-founders. So you're going to be in the middle of this battle with your co-founders. And it has to be people that you love to be with, even in difficult times. And I, at some point, was the only founder left because everyone decided that there were other things that were more important to them. So I think it's really, really critical for you to find the right co-founders. For Veniam, I was very fortunate in the initial years with my co-founder, Susanna Sargent, who was also a professor, and then two Americans, so Robin Chase and Roy Russell, good friends. And I say still because many co-founders in the end, the divorce rate among co-founders is very, very high. And then also perhaps one last item for this list of mistakes that you should avoid at all costs is to hire too soon. And so, especially when you raise money from investors, there's always strong pressure to go build your team and so on. So be very, very, very conservative hiring. And especially for venture-backed startups or startups that have investors, but just in general, I mean, you have to start somewhere, is make the money last as long as you can. So be extremely frugal. Don't spend money on things that are unnecessary. But there, I think probably, at least from the examples I know, it's European and Americans that have to learn from our African counterparts and friends, because I've seen examples of entrepreneurship of really in Africa of doing incredible things with very, very little resources. And I think that that's something to preserve. So even when you raise more money, is continue to be as disciplined and frugal with the money as possible, because you're going to need it. The market never responds the way you expect it. Everything takes 3 times longer than you planned or hoped for. And so I think being very conservative on the financial side is very important.
Thank you, João, for your answer. We have another question for you, and the question is if you have any tips for someone who wants to create his own startup but it's scared.
in Portuguese, we say, if you're scared by a dog. Just kidding. No. What do I do when I'm scared? I actually am a very, very strong believer of 2 things. One is meditation, and the other one is community. And so the things that give me strength are whenever I'm able to muster the discipline of actually stopping and going into nature, or just sitting, even if it's just in my living room, but just sitting with my thoughts and letting them flow and really understand where are these emotions coming from, and observe them, and developing this ability, training this ability to distance yourself from your emotions, and be able then to look at where is this fear coming from, and what is the worst that can happen. So that's always another exercise I do very often, is what is the worst that can happen, and is it really that bad? It sounds like cheap psychology, but it really works for me, of really stopping and just say, what is the worst that can happen, and what do I really want is the other really important thing. What do I really want? And then the third thing is, why am I doing this? So what is the purpose? And I found that that's the main driver for me and the team always through difficult moments, is that, hey, we're out on a crusade to, make our cities safer and more sustainable for everybody. That's what we're doing. And this is just another bump in the road, or a challenge that we must overcome. and that sense of purpose is really important. And the second thing regarding, as I was mentioning, so meditation actually gave me a discipline to do this every day, or at least in a regular way, and that reduces fear, at least reduces my fear. So it has worked for me well throughout the years. I'm actually more driven by the fear of failure than anything else. I just don't want to be embarrassed. And so if you are able to look at your fear as a driver rather than a barrier, and I think meditation helps with that. The other thing is community, and it works in two ways. One is to have your supporters, like your fans, your family, and I have been blessed with an absolutely amazing wife, Anna, who has supported me throughout all of this. And it's not easy to be married to an entrepreneur and a founder. So so find the right partner in life. It would be the other one. Easier said than done, but that for sure. And then the whole community as well. Sometimes another mistake that entrepreneurs sometimes find is that, oh, I'm going to keep it a secret because this is such a great business idea. I don't want anybody to find out. And it's silly because, ideas are a dime a dozen, as they say in the US. And it's much more important to really support. And I found that, by talking to a lot of people and telling the story, hey, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And being curious and realizing that you're not alone. I mean, community just shows you that, hey, all these startup entrepreneurs, founders, and projects like this are really helpful as well because they build community, is that you're not alone. And so you might be afraid, but here's 20 other people who are afraid and are still doing it. And I often think it's funny. I'll tell you one more story, which was I was very fortunate to get to meet one of the most famous CEO coaches in the world. His name is Jerry Colonna in the United States. He wrote a really great book called Reboot, which I recommend. And Jerry and I once were talking, and I was we're friends, and I was in really disappointed with everything. I was telling them, I was coming from science and research and everything. And of course, there's politics in university as well. But, mostly it was collaborative and cooperative. And now in business, everything is so cold and transactional. And it's like everyone's just looking for what can I get out of this and what's in it for me. And then he asked me, well, but how do you imagine other areas like politics and so on? And I said, yeah, no, for sure, politics is the same, but every now and then there's a Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and so on. And then Jerry looked at me and said, okay, so there's Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi. So what are you waiting for? And his point was that, you have a chance to do things differently, even if you don't like, the market, the business world, the way it is. You get a chance to try and do it in your own way and doing it differently. And if you think that business should be principled and that business should be ethical and that negotiations should be not everyone just trying to get the leg up on everybody else, but try to find something that really works for everyone in a creative, constructive way, then that's the way you should run it. And so I would say that the strength comes from this inner work, so from meditation. The support comes from the community, and then the extra is faith, the belief that things will turn out fine. They might not turn out the way that you imagined them, but something valuable will come if you do the work, and I strongly believe that.
You had this amazing, not journey path, and you are already super inside the ecosystem, but how to enter this ecosystem? So how can an African startup be known by foreign investor? What's the best networks to enter? What's the best way to find the right people, the right networks? Even, for example, digital innovation hubs, that is the main target of our product. How can these digital innovation hubs attract new top technologies and foreign technologies? So I think it's, I don't know, in a few words, because we are almost running out of time, but just in a few words, what's the biggest advice to enter this ecosystem and these networks?
So I don't want to make it sound easy. So the first thing I want to say, it's going to be hard. And it's not just hard for you, especially, it's hard for everyone. And on top of that, you know, there's more and more entrepreneurs and thousands and thousands and thousands of startups. The good news is that never before has more venture capital gone out into other countries outside of the US and outside of Europe and so on. There's an awareness today from investors and venture capital and customers, potential customers, that innovation can come from anywhere. And this was not true 20 years ago. The Silicon Belt investors, VCs, for example, were essentially supporting startups out of the San Francisco Bay Area, then a little bit in New York. Now they're coming from everywhere in the US, but also everywhere in Europe and the Middle East and Africa and India and so on and so forth. And so from that perspective, you know, even though it's going to be hard, because it's hard for everyone, the conditions, I think, specifically coming out of Africa now, are probably better than ever before. And I think they tend to improve because it's becoming more and more known of what you know, Africa has to offer in terms of growth opportunities, and just, you know, masses of consumers that are coming into the market, that investors are very aware of that. Now, how, in practical terms, how to do that? The internet, obviously. I mean, that's really, you know, where a lot of business is done today. I think the pandemic really helped with another thing, was that before you had to go fundraising in person, you had to do business in person. Now everything is over Zoom and over Slack. So that really made things a lot easier. Also, it doesn't really matter where you are. You can contact. Now, the harder thing is not so much this connectivity part, is how to get attention, and you have to have a really great story, and I think in general it's really important to tell an interesting story, and for that you have to be an interesting person. And and this sounds like, oh, so how do I become an interesting person? Well, you go out of the house and you meet interesting people, and you find role models, and you find mentors, and you try to have different experiences, and you grow as a person. And again, it's easier said than done, but I think, you know, having looked also at investment opportunities from the other side and being asked by VCs to look at investment opportunities, in the end, they invest very, very much in the person. And so be bold and be audacious, be very practical, but also be bold and tell and think. And that's the other thing, is that everybody wants to hear an inspiring story and a big story. So not something that is going to be, you know, a small neighborhood business, but something that people feel, oh, wow, this could actually touch the lives of millions of people. And so it is good business because it's going to have an impact on real problems for real people. And so by doing that, you can keep going. Hey, I was coming from Portugal, which like 10 years or 12 years ago was being saved by International Monetary Fund, had no stories of successful startups. You know, today we have 8 unicorns, but, you know, before this, none of this existed 10 years ago. So we were coming also from, you know, a part of the world where entrepreneurship just didn't exist and wasn't. There's probably more entrepreneurship in many African places right now than existed in Portugal 10 years ago, in terms of starting new business, new products, rolling them out to consumers and to other businesses. that's really the type of story that investors want to hear, that dynamic. And people love people who are optimistic and cheerful, and have their feet on the ground at the same time. So that would be my best guess. But feel free also to reach out. Katarina has my contact, and I'm happy to engage further as well.
Thank you, João. I don't know if someone else would like to add a question, but otherwise, I will ask you to please turn on your cameras for our family photo. We usually do this at the end of events. Georgiana is here, ready to take this photo.
Yes.
Oh, I wish I had your faces the whole time. This is so much nicer than, I mean, I like Katarina, both Katarinas very much, but wow, wonderful to see you all.
Thank you very much for everything.
And Maxwell and Promise, excellent. Very
Okay,
good.
so smile, please. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Georgiana. You can also find in the chat the link for our evaluation service, very important for the project purposes, as you might understand. And I think we can end here. Thank you very much, João, and thank you very much for you joining us. I think it was very interesting and insightful. I do hope that some contacts and potential collaborations could come up from this conversation.
I would love that very much. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.